two is that it creates neutralizing forces. Now, this is more specifically for a flexed spine. So when we maintain a neutral posture, the muscles of the lower back and the mid back, they activate. And again, as I've mentioned, they are active tissues, so they act on the lower back to maintain greater health. And again, when we are in that neutral posture, again, the stress is on the spine from that muscle activation is distributed more evenly. Now, when we go into a flexed posture, what happens is there is an anterior shear to the spine. So if you can imagine, you've got two vertebrae that sit on top of each other with a disc in between like that. This is the front of the spine, and obviously the back of my hand is the back of the spine. Now, an anterior shear force is where, for want of a better way of describing it, it's where the vertebra on top wants to fall off the vertebra below it. So that's known as an anterior shear, is the fact that it's getting pulled forwards. So if I do that from the side, so it's kind of like that. So it's being sheared forwards like that. So when we go into a flex posture, we have that force that is trying to pull that forward. So again, that is a stress to the spine. That is a stress to the passive tissues, the ligaments, the vertebra, and the discs. Now, when we go into a neutral posture, this is where the forces are neutralized. So when we have that force wanting to pull it forward, what happens is when the muscles, when it's in the neutral posture, when they activate, essentially those muscles are pulling that the vertebra back. So you have what's called an anterior shear force, trying to make it fall off the front. The muscles then create a posterior shear force, which want to make it fall off the back. But those two together, they get neutralized, so it holds it in place. And again, that comes down to neutralizing and spreading load more evenly. Because as I mentioned at the start, if we take that vertebra off the top of the disc, and we can see the forces, we've got them coming out the front, out the back, to the left, to the right, diagonally left, right, forwards, back, so on and so forth. So all the way around in 360 degrees. When we go into the flex posture, we lose that posterior shear force. So what we're doing is we are essentially, by way of our movement, and more specifically loaded movement, i.e. in a gym with weight or lifting shopping bags or whatever it may be, these forces are going on the spine. So the better we can use our spine with movement, with exercise, the more effective we're going to be at neutralizing those forces, spreading them more evenly, and therefore maintaining a greater health of the spine for longer. Because again, as I've mentioned, and I'm going to say it again, we cannot eradicate these forces. We can just minimize them. So we give ourselves the best chance to be able to, first of all, recover from any problems that we've had, but then also minimize their risk of them happening in the future. And another thing I'll add here is there's no such thing as prevention, because prevention is saying it won't happen in the future. And that is a very big guarantee to put forward. And that's not something that I put forward. What I put forward is minimizing risk and doing everything we can to give ourselves the best chance of being in a healthy state than not in a healthy state. And when it comes to everyday movement, we can get pulled and pushed and we can move around, be very unconscious of how we're moving. So that's going to put us in a greater risk. So the more conscious we can be of our movement and the position of our spine, the better it's going to be. The more we can be in that position than not be in that position, because again, we're not going to be in it 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's unrealistic. So again, we've got to be there more often than not. And that's going to give us a greater chance. So number 2 is that it creates neutralizing forces. When we go into the neutral spine, when we come out of it, again, those forces get spread across the spine unevenly, creating problems.